So we have VirtualBox installed. If we want to set up a deployment server virtual machine, we will need the Windows Server installation files. Google Windows Server 2022. Here we have the Evaluation Center link. That's the one we want. Under Get Started for Free, there is a Download the ISO option. Click on that. Here you can fill out your information if you'd like. I am just looking for the ISO, so I'm just going to put in filler info here. Here we have a lot of different languages to choose from, but we will choose English US, and we'll click on this ISO download 64-bit edition link. But the ISO download, we'll move the ISO to our ISOs folder and rename it to Windows Server 2022. Now we can set up our VM. Open VirtualBox or VMware if that's your thing. Hit New. Name of the VM is going to be AIM. Folder, hit the caret icon on the right, and then Other. We'll navigate to our VMs folder. Select the folder, hit that caret to the right of the ISO image, and hit Other. Navigate to your server ISO, and hit Open. Edition, choose the standard evaluation desktop experience. The other ones are either for data centers or command line based. Type is Microsoft Windows. Version is Windows 2022 64-bit. Skip unattended installation. Hardware, to get this to move along as fast as possible, I'm going to give the VM everything I've got. So crank it up but stay in the green. We'll also enable EFI. Hard disk, the only thing to change here is going to be the size of the aim.vdi disk. We'll increase it to 200 gigabytes. We want a lot of space for our deployment files like ISOs and similar. VDI is fine for the file type and variant, and make sure to not check this pre-allocate full size box. That will require the entire space and take forever to set up. Finish. Right-click the VM and hit Settings, General and Advanced. Choose Bidirectional for shared clipboard and drag and drop. Enable disk encryption. Cipher, AES-256 is the stronger of the two. Put in your password and confirm. Everything else is the default until we get to network options. Make sure only the first one is enabled. Here we're going to select Not Attached for now so we can set our personalization settings and wallpaper before Microsoft does their license check. We'll enable the internet after we're done with that. Make sure all the serial ports are off. USB, usually choose the latest. Shared folders, we're going to share a folder to make it easier to move our files in and out of the VM. Hit the plus folder icon on the right. Check Automap. Hit the caret to the right of the folder path box. Other. Navigate to the folder you'd like to share. I have one called Transfer that I use just for this. Select folder. OK. And that is about it. We now see we have an encrypted Windows Server virtual machine set up. Launch the VM, put in your password, click into the VM window and press any key to boot from the ISO, which will read like a CD or DVD. Eventually you will get to the Server OS setup screen. Defaults are fine. Install now. Standard evaluation desktop experience. Accept the terms. Custom install. New. Apply. OK. Select the primary partition. Windows will install the server. Eventually, you'll get to this screen where you will need to set an administrator password. After entering, eventually you can log in. Now, in VMs for VirtualBox, when you need to do Control-Alt-Delete, it will do it for your host, not the VM. So the hypervisor has this built-in Control-Alt-Delete under Input, Keyboard, Insert, Control-Alt-Delete. Put in your password. We can close this out. We'll clean up the taskbar a little bit. We see we aren't connected to the internet, which is what we want right now. Let's get our guest editions installed. Go to Devices and select Insert Guest Editions CD image. Go to File Explorer and this PC to see it sitting there under Devices and Drives. Click into it and run the AMD 64 version. Click through. Defaults are fine. Reboot now. Insert Control-Alt-Delete. Put in your password. Navigate to this PC, and we see our transfer folder is now connected. On our host computer, we have a wallpaper that will move into transfer and pick it up in the VM. Move it to the pictures folder and set it as the desktop background with right click. There we are. We'll set the other personalization settings. Dark mode, we'll add some color and finish out personalization. Let's turn our network on. Go over to VM settings, under network, click on not attached, and under attached to, we'll select now. And there's our network. Let's update. Once we've got a good amount of updates in there, we can restart. Okay, so with server specifically, the updates being released right now, it will get stuck on this orchestrator service one the first time around. I have spent many instances just waiting here for ages, and I found that if you let it go for about 5 to 10 minutes, you can power off the VM to speed up the process a fair bit. It just gets hung up there for some reason. Don't worry, it'll be okay. VMs are ephemeral after all. Boot it back up and run through the updates again. You can configure the rest of your settings while you wait. Let's change our computer name by going to the local server, computer name, change. We'll name it to AIM and hit OK. We'll restart later. Go back to the updates and wait for this round to require a restart. There it is. And we see that after about 5 minutes it pushes through. Insert Control-Alt-Delete, password, and check for updates again. And we are up to date. Let's do a basic deployment setup first with just Windows deployment services installed. In Server Manager, go to Manage, Add Roles and Features, Role-Based or Feature-Based Installation. Select your server from the server pool. AIM is what we want. Check Windows deployment services, add features, next, install, and we see it pop into the server dashboard. Go to Tools, Windows Deployment Services, Expand Servers, right-click AIM, Configure Server. Next, Standalone Server, default for remote install folder location is fine. Hit yes at the warning. Respond to all client computers known and unknown. We'll deselect the add images to server now. We're going to add them in a different way. Restart WDS by right-clicking the server and going to all tasks, restart. And as always, once I do a big change, I restart to get it to settle. So we'll pick update and shut down. Let's set VirtualBox up for running multiple virtual machines. So we need to decrease the server processor cores and base memory to be able to accommodate the other 2 virtual machines that we'll create. Right-click the VM and go to Settings. These VMs can run on pretty low amounts of RAM. I would say 4 to 6 gigabytes minimum per VM would be okay. We're going to end up with 3 at the same time. This one will set to around 12 gigs to leave 12 for the other 2. We'll also set the processor cores to 12 to leave 12 cores for the other 2 as well. We also want a network for the VMs to talk to each other so they can receive images. We're going to go with this NAT network option after we set up our NAT network. We can see we don't have one to pick right now, and that popped an invalid setting at the bottom. So we'll go back to NAT for now, go to the little menu to the right of Tools, and click on Network. Go to the NAT Networks tab, click the Create button for a new NAT network. We'll change the network name to Deploy Network, and we'll change our subnet to 10.0.2.0 over 25. Hit Apply, click on the server VM. Under Network, there is this NAT option. Click on that and change it to NAT network from the dropdown, and we see the deploy network under name. Okay, we'll add the VM to a new group and rename it to WIAD for Windows Imaging and Deployment. The first thing we need to deploy Windows through WDS is going to be a boot image. I've tried quite a few of these boot images off of various ISOs, and I think the server version is probably the most stable. So if we want the boot file, we'll need to grab it from the Windows Server ISO. Navigate to your Windows Server ISO, double-click the ISO to mount it, click on Open if you need to, go to Sources, sort the files by size, and it will most likely be the second largest file in there, boot.wim. Copy that over into the transfer folder. Just to show how valuable this process is, let me tell you a story. I built these Windows 10 and 11 images on my previous laptop. I even recorded the deployment process and just needed to edit it to get part 3 out for Windows imaging and deployment. But my laptop was tragically used as a trampoline by my kitten. It fell to the floor, hitting it in just the right way to completely crack the motherboard right at the power source. Alas, my laptop of 8 years that got me through college was no more. But all is not lost. I got a new laptop, performed an autopsy on the old one, and pulled the hard drive out which contained the custom Windows images. So, my friends, our creations live on. Now that is what I call persistence. After retrieving them and copying them over to my new computer, we can now copy them over into our transfer folder. Let's boot up our server, password, send Control-Alt-Delete, password again. There is our network. Navigate to this PC and our transfer folder and copy out boot.wim to C, remote install, boot, by 64 images, and paste it in here. If we go over and open up WDS, expand the server and click on boot images, we see an item got sucked in there. WDS auto-populated the file from the folder we pasted it in. Now let's do something similar for our 2 custom Windows images. Let's copy them out of the transfer folder and navigate to this PC C. Remote install images. Let's create a folder for Windows 10 and a folder for Windows 11. We'll paste in the two custom images here. Purple Waves is a Windows 10 image and Outer Space is a Windows 11 image. Go back to WDS and right click the server. All tasks, restart to refresh WDS. If we click on install images, we see Windows 10 and Windows 11 groups have been added. So whatever folders you put in that images folder will pop up here as a group. If we click into them, we can see Purple Waves in Windows 10 and Outer Space in Windows 11. Once I have all my images set in WDS, I like to shut down just to get everything to settle. Boot it back up and sign in. Once we see WDS on the dashboard, we'll create a test virtual machine to make sure our deployments work. We'll create a Windows 10 VM first. Name will be Fire 10. Defaults are good. No ISO because we're getting the image via network from the deployment server. Version is going to be Windows 10 64-bit. Hardware base memory should be 6. Processors will be 6 as well. Defaults for hard disk, since this is just a test. Right click, settings. Change the boot order to have the network option at the top and hard disk in second. Change the network attached to adapter to not network for our deploy network, and that should be good. Drag the VM into the WIAD group, start it up, click into the VM and wait for it to connect to the server. Now it'll be quick, so be ready for it, but press F12 when the text pops up that says press F12 for network service boot. If you miss it, power off the VM and try again. Let it load boot.wim. While we're waiting, let's create one for our outer space image. So same configuration for this virtual machine, but this one is for Windows 11. Base memory is 6, processors are 6, hard disk is good as it is. Right click Fire 11 settings, uncheck EFI to change the boot order. Network at the top, hard disk in second. Network is not network. Okay. Click into the VM, press F12 when prompted. Let it load boot.wim. Our other VM is good to go. Now just a note that this process will need to be modified eventually. We can see a message here that WDS is being partially deprecated. So you'll need to incorporate the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit into all of this to get it to work eventually. Not sure when that will be, but this setup works for now. So we'll hit next. Defaults here are fine. Now we don't have anything but WDS set up here. So we can use local /administrator, which is the username we're using on the deployment server, and it'll be that password that you set earlier for administrator. Here we pick our image. Fire 10 needs Windows 10, so we will choose Purple Waves. Next, and wait for Windows to install. Still waiting on Fire 11. We'll do the same thing here and sign in with our local administrator account. We'll choose Outer Space since that is our Windows 11 image, and they're off. Windows 11 is pretty quick. We've got our privacy settings already. Windows 10 is still installing. Decline all of these, and we see our image deployment was successful. We eventually get to our Windows 10 screen, decline these, and our Windows 10 deployment was also successful. So this will work on whatever network that the deployment server is on. Let's do a bit more to give us an internal network configuration that can work on its own without an external internet connection. So this version of the setup will work regardless of the internet connection. It just needs the server and the receiving machine to be placed on the same network. We'll need DHCP and DNS. Go to Manage, Add Roles and Features, Role-based or Feature-based, default for the destination server. Check DHCP, Add Features. Check DNS, Add Features. Let's shut down since we added a couple of roles. Go over to Not Network and uncheck Enable DHCP since we have that role installed, and click on Apply. Boot up the server and type in your password to decrypt. Sign in. Under All Servers, we see this 169.apipa IP, and that's because we did not finish setting up DHCP. So click on the flag and go through the prompts. Let's give our server a static IP. Start, network, network status, change adapter options. Right click Ethernet, properties. Click on IPv4 and hit properties. Use the following IP address, 10.0.2.30. Subnet mask auto-populates. Default gateway is 10.0.2.1. Preferred DNS is going to be 10.0.2.1. OK, and close. If we refresh all the servers, we can see our IP is now 10.0.2.30. Configuring DHCP. go to Tools, DHCP, expand the server name and IPv4, right-click IPv4, new scope, name is deploy network, start IP 10.0.2.50, and the end IP is 10.0.2.100, which means that we can deploy 50 machines at once. No exclusions or delays right now. Least duration is how long the IP will be used by a device before it is released and refreshed. We'll set it to 8 hours, but you can set it to whatever you like. Yes, I want to configure these options now. Default gateway will add 10.0.2.1. DNS server will add 10.0.2.30. Give it a moment. Nothing for wins. Yes, I want to activate the scope now. Finish. Configuring DNS. From Tools, open DNS, just like DHCP. Expand AIM, forward lookup zones. Right-click on the forward lookup zone and click on New Zone. Primary zone. The zone name is what you'd like the server to be called on the network. This can really be anything since we're building our own internal network, so we'll just use wizards.deploy. Next, next, and next. Finish. Click on the new forward lookup zone, wizards.deploy. Right click, new host A or AAA. Name is AIM. IP address 10.0.2.30. Right click reverse lookup zone and click on a new zone. Primary zone, IPv4 reverse lookup zone. Network ID is 10.0.2. Next, 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 and finish. Click the new reverse lookup zone. Right click the white space to the right. New pointer, PTR, browse, double click AIM, then forward lookup zone, then wizards.deploy, and select AIM. OK and OK. Refresh the servers, restart the deployment server. Let's set up another test VM. So we see it hanging there. I have a feeling it's because WDS is configured to run with the server before we put in our DHCP and DNS. So let's go remove WDS and then add it again. So to remove a role in the server, manage, remove roles and features, next, uncheck Windows deployment services, remove features, next, next, remove. Restart the server, sign in, manage, add roles and features, role-based or featured-based, default for select, a destination server, check Windows deployment services, add features, next, next. We want both deployment and transport servers. Next, install Tools, Windows deployment services, expand servers, right click on the server name, configure server, next. We want a standalone server, remote installation folder location is fine as it is, yes to the warning, proxy DHCP server, leave both of these checked, respond to all client computers known and unknown. Finish. We see we still have our folder structure available from before. Right click the server name, all tasks, and start. We'll restart just for good measure. Let's pop Fire 10. It should work now. And there is our prompt, F12 here. I'm going to build a Windows 11 VM while this installation is going and do the same thing with that one. Sign in with our server admin creds. Timer for metric's sake. I'll give Fire 10 a few minutes head start since Windows 11 is way faster. There is our Windows 11 image, and finally our Windows 10 is there as well. 16 minutes for 2 simultaneous deployments. I remember a time where it would take us a few hours per computer. And there we have our images side by side. Wonderful. So we know it works. The last step of this project involves configuring your VMs to push images out to physical computers. So first we'll change our AIM VM. Right click, settings, under network, change the attach to option to bridged adapter and the name option to your Ethernet adapter. Mine is this Realtek PCIe GBE family controller option. Yours may be different. This may take you a few tries and you might need to try a few other options to get it right. But this one is going to be whatever your Ethernet adapter may be called. We'll make the same changes for Fire 10 and Fire 11 so that they are all configured to run through the Ethernet port. So remember that they're running through your host computer's Ethernet port. Now I'm going to demo this server pushing out images through the Ethernet port to any computer also connected to the Ethernet port without an internet connection. So that's right, I am completely turning my external internet connection off. We are now offline. Boot up the deployment server, password. We see the VM is also offline. We see all of our roles are active and online, and we see we are indeed offline in the external sense, in both the VM and our host computer. Now we are still configured to boot the VM's network first, so no changes are needed there. But if you're deploying to a physical computer, you will need to connect one side of the Ethernet cable to your host computer and the other side of the Ethernet cable into the computer to receive the image. You should get something similar to this screen right here. If you have multiple boot images, they will be displayed here where you can select them, but in this case, it's just the one, so it's just pressing F12 at the right moment. We see Fire 10 connected to our server and is pulling boot.wim. Let's pop our Fire 11 VM. There is our F12 moment. There is our Fire 10 VM. Let's run through and set up our installation. Deployment server creds. It's a Windows 10, so pull purple waves. Let's delete everything we had before and create new partitions with new, apply, and OK. Let's stop here so that we can run both at the same time and see which is faster. Same thing for Fire 11. The deployment server creds, outer space, delete everything and create new partitions. New, apply, OK. I'll pull up a timer and start it, then both of the VMs. We see Windows 11 come in at a wonderful 11.5 minutes. Now, you may get this sometimes. In my experience, the deployments do vary quite a bit, but it's usually a little over half an hour, like this one at the most. But there we have both of our VMs with our custom images deployed over an air-gapped network, completely offline. I hope that this video and this series help those who need to speed up their Windows installations, or for users looking to get into IT or cybersecurity. And if you found this content useful, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. If you'd like to learn more about imaging and deployment, there are always parts 1 and 2 of the WIAD series. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, see ya.